Hello everyone and welcome to Dinsmore Simulations. I'm Dinsmore Sim. Here we're going to be exploring complex games by understanding how they work. Super excited, I'm going to be showing you one of my favourite games at the minute, which is Ark Survival Ascended. Probably spent well over 1,000 hours now playing the game, so exploring it, getting to know it, and so I wanted to explore it from the very beginning and help you all to understand it a little bit better. Don't worry if you're completely new to the game or you're returning after a break, we're going to discover these things and work on them side by side, building our understanding as we go, and then see where the adventure takes us. So, if you're ready, let's create a survivor, step onto the island, and start from zero. So, as you load the game, I wanted to show you this before we go in. You're going to have a couple of menus and options. For the moment, just click on press to start, and you're going to be creating a new game. It might look slightly different on your screen as I've been playing it for a little while. I've got some of the DLC content things that we can talk about later, but I will try and point those out as we go. So for the moment, just click on create or resume game. This is going to load up the main arcs that you can load into. So you can have a save game on each of these. There is PvE and PvP, but I'm going to be focused solely on single player, and I really encourage you to explore that, especially if you want to do PvE and PvP. It can be really hard to get into that without knowing and understanding the mechanics well of the game. So single player I think is a really nice way to do that. And the way that the game is set up, don't worry if you haven't played the predecessor to this, which was Ark Evolved. You don't need to have any prior knowledge of that. I hadn't played that game before, and Ark Ascended is really the reinvention of that game using the Unreal Engine 5. So with the story arcs, the way that the game really wants you to progress is to essentially ascend the arc. And the first map that we have is the island, and that's the one that we're going to be focusing this series on. I'll just talk very briefly about the others. Feel free, you could always start on a different map just to get a different feel for that, but I would suggest maybe doing that after you've spent some time on the island and maybe explored some of the things that we'll be talking about over the series. The mechanics can be a little bit tricky to pick up without any prior knowledge. It's definitely something that took me a good while to get into, and it can be, I think, something that puts people off playing the game longer term. It's definitely an open world game, it's a sandbox game, it's for those that don't mind grinding for materials, exploring, but you can really set the pace for the game in terms of what you want to do. There's loads of options in terms of the way you want to play the game, and so we'll be exploring that from today. But the priority for today's session is getting you set up and started to hopefully enjoy the game as best as you can. So we have these different maps, and the island, as you can read here, we've got a little description. As a man or woman stranded naked, freezing on a mysterious island, you must hunt, harvest, craft items, grow crops, and build shelters to survive. Use skill and cunning to kill, tame, breed, and ride dinosaurs and primeval creatures. Master your environment and explore the hidden depths to uncover Ark's secrets. And that's kind of it. They don't really give you much more help with that. The later arcs are definitely more challenging. Scorched Earth is, as the name suggests, there's a fair bit of challenge in terms of how much hotter the environment is. It's a desert, arid environment, and that does make it more difficult in the early game. As you progress into Aberration and Extinction, again, it's different biomes. In here, you've got radioactive sunlight, environmental hazards. In Extinction, you are progressing with some totally different creatures. This one is focused on a sort of element-infested, ravaged planet with extra sort of fantastical creatures. So there's really nice to go in and explore those, but there's a lot to take from them. So I would definitely get started on Island first. Just to mention quickly, you've got these fantasy arcs as well. These are kind of like an open sandbox. They don't progress quite in the same way as the story arcs, but to be honest, having played for probably 1,000 hours plus, I still haven't ascended any of the story arcs, so that I would definitely say there's plenty for you to be doing within any of these maps. And whether you want to play on Estros, which is a DLC map, or some of the others that have been recently added, Ragnarok, Valguero, I would definitely recommend the Centre. It's a really amazing map. It's absolutely enormous, and it was one of the more recent expansions after they added to the main story arcs. It's a great map to again explore some of the creatures similar to the island. So if you want something of a similar experience to the island, but you want to try something different, then the centre would be a great single player one to start, but I would definitely recommend after you've explored things as part of the series. So without further ado, I'm going to click on single player, and this is going to load us into the character creation screen. You probably recognise this if you've played many Survivor games. You generally have an opportunity to create your character. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. I'm just going to show you a couple of the details here. You've got some preset body templates, skin colour, overall height. Just be mindful, you can go really small or really high, but some of the bases, for example, the doors and things, are at a preset height. So if you go too high, you can still go through them, but it just looks a bit strange. You basically walk through like when your head walks through a wall. So it depends how you want to set that up. I like to have it maybe just over half or 2/3 like this. Body composition, this is quite nice. You can actually just move this again as a bit of a preset and go to more extremes. You know, again, set up exactly how you want to play your game. I quite like going for that sort of aesthetic. You can literally change everything, and I'll just show you a couple of these just so you can see how in depth it is. You can scroll around. I'm just using my left mouse to move around here. You've got lots of options for faces. You can use some of those presets, or you can play around with some of the others. So again, feel free to spend some time there. On the torso you can do the same. So look, you can change width of shoulders, you can change individual muscles, bigger hips, smaller hips, yeah, so totally customizable, which I think is really cool. So there we go, so that's going to be my character. Once you're ready, just click on create. Don't worry about save, load or reset. This is to do with the arc ascension once you've ascended the arc, and essentially once you've done that you can download your character into the next arc. So this is why in the story progression they suggest that you start with the island, ascend the island, and then go on to Scorched Earth, because you would take all of that experience into the next map. But you can certainly start it in single player as a total newbie, just like we're doing here, but I would suggest the island would be the best one to get started with. So I'm just going to click on create. There's going to be a little bit of an intro, so sit back and enjoy listening to that as we get started on the island in Ark. Just one more thing I forgot to mention. Just before that loads up, we get a map of the island. Now you're not going to see this on your screen if it's a first playthrough. It has this fog of war on. So what you will have is these tabs around the side which have your spawn in points, and they refer to these zones in the left, and you can see actually as I hover over that it moves around the screen. Can you see that there? So feel free, you know, you might decide actually you're someone who likes a bit more of a challenge when you play a game. I would suggest with this game you're going to find that quite tricky because there are loads of early mechanics to really get to grips with. So even if you just went through this series and did a little bit within South Zone, you might then have learned enough to start a brand new game and respawn in maybe somewhere a little bit more challenging. That will give you access to other creatures in the early part of the game. As I said, we're going to be spawning all the way down here. You could technically walk all the way to the north, but you would not get there. You would get eaten by millions of things in between. And especially in the early game, you're just not going to survive that. So just something to bear in mind. Just before we load in, definitely don't be worrying about dying. This is a big part of Ark, and that's why I'm encouraging you to think about starting in the South Zone. So click on spawn, have a listen to the intros, and we will get started.
Are you the one I've been waiting for? You might be. I hope so. It's been so many cycles since I was her. Do I even still remember Hope? I wasn't sure you'd ever turn up. The odds just kept getting longer. I guess I've been losing faith, while they've been gaining power. You have to reach me. Everything depends on your survival. Master this world. Make allies of its many creatures. Grow your strength and skill. Explore this place like I did so long ago. Put put the pieces together and find me, Survivor. You may be the only one who can.
You know, kid, sooner or later, you're gonna have to talk about it. What are you drawing over there, anyway? Hey, that's not bad. And this is you over here, with this dum-dum?
Don't be mean to Honker. No, I don't want to talk about him.
He's your dad, Mika. Now, I may not know a lot, and I made plenty of my own mistakes back in my day, but I do know one thing. Families gotta stick together.
Well, why don't you go tell him not to be such a stinky dino goon?
That's just not how it works, Mika. Look, maybe old Uncle Bob here can shed some light on the situation, about why the big man thinks the way he does.
Wait, you knew my dad before all this? So, were you also on the, what did he call them? The Arcs?
Yeah, those. Say, have I ever told you the story about how your dad and I saved everyone together?
You were there? You were one of the heroes?
Well, yeah, sure. In fact, you might say that I was the most important part of the whole story.
Okay.
Go ask Santiago yourself if you don't believe
No!
me.
I want you to tell me, Uncle Bob.
All right, then. Let's start at the very beginning. On a faraway tropical island surrounded by sparkling blue water. That island was the first time I ever saw big, dumb lizards like Honker here. And it was the first place I ran into her.
So there you go, guys. I don't know whether that helped you at all in terms of understanding your place in the world in this arc, but here we are. You spawn, scratch your implant, and we're in the game. So you're given no other introduction than that, and then you're just basically thrown straight in. Because we've spawned into one of these easier zones, generally speaking, you're not going to have a dino right next to you, but that can occasionally still happen. So that's why I encourage you to think about spawning in this area. So we're just going to talk through some of the game mechanics to get you started. Just to let you know, I'm here playing it on PC. So you've got your typical movement keys, WASD. I've got spacebar, which is a jump. If I'm moving and press the shift key, I do a run, but that is going to use my stamina. And my left mouse is going to punch, and my right mouse is for aim and a couple of other functions. If you're a bit unsure with which particular key is set to certain things, or you want to set things up on your mouse, for example, I've done that with a couple of other really important settings, then I would suggest going into the main settings onto keyboard here, and you'll see where they're already assigned, and then selecting that. Okay, so now you're not going to know which creatures are good and which creatures are bad, so I would say you need to accept two things in this game. Firstly, any decision is maybe going to kill you, so you're just going to have to accept that that might happen. Now, with the Pteranodon, they won't attack you. They're not a aggressive dino. Just to mention a couple of things about dinos, because we'll see a few of these in this first session. Did you see there that it said wild male dino? So you get male and female dinos, and it gave a level. Now, normally when you start with all the vanilla settings, the level is capped, so it doesn't put you on a really high difficulty level. Since I've been playing this for a little while now, I've now changed that, so it changes the levels of the dinos. I would say, as a complete beginner, just don't worry about it. Play it as is when you spawn in. If it's something later that you feel you want to change, then it might be something to explore. At the moment, my level cap has been increased, and all dinos now on the island will show up to a maximum of level 150. So 85 is a reasonably strong dino. Just be careful of that, because if you want to pick a fight with a dino, even if it's a tiny one, if it's of a high level, you might struggle to survive against it, especially literally after spawning in on the map. So all I'm doing here is wandering around, pressing E. Now you could press and hold E, I find that a little bit easier, and I can just use my mouse to move my direction. And then I'm picking up things as I go. So can you see on the left hand side there you've got items showing. These are going to be dropping into my inventory, and I'm going to show you here. The sound has changed, and actually you can see on the left now that I'm picking up rocks. So these are actually stones, and they're the small stones, and that's the only thing that you can't interact with. So at this very early stage I can't punch a rock, thankfully, although you can punch a tree. And look, if I punch a tree, a couple of things are going to happen. You can see I've got some materials collecting on the left there. This is actually thatch, and then you've just seen I got one wood. So, but do you see how my body's taking damage? So this is something to bear in mind at the very early start of the game. One thing that's quite nice on PC, if you press K, it gives you a full 360 view, and you can be changing that as well, so that's quite nice if you're exploring areas where you want to zoom out and get a bit more understanding for where you are. That can be a nice view, so that's K for PC players. So I press K again and I'm back, and you can see I'm already starting to heal. In the top left it's telling you the day, it's giving you the specific name of the area that I'm in, so all this is the south side or the south beach. This individual place is called the Footpaw. Some of the other maps, it can be really hard in the early game, because if it gets too hot then you start getting heat stroke, if it gets too cold you get hypothermia, and you can die from simply just exposure. So do think of it very much as a survival game, and I think if you think of it in that way and start to think what are the main things that I need, then that's going to really help you in this initial setup, and it's really what we're focused on trying to do within this first video. So I've been walking around doing that for a little while, and I've collected some additional things. Punched a tree, got a few things, I've even seen a few dinos, and so now it might be useful to have a look at the inventory. So if you press V, this is going to load up the inventory screen, and you're going to see here we have a couple of options. It typically drops into the crafting tab. This is my main inventory. You can hover over that and see all the things that I've been picking up, and you'll start to get a sense now for the picture of these things, and that will help you longer term. Sometimes you'll pick things up and think, I have no idea what I just picked up there. So do come and have a look in your inventory. Fibre, you're going to need this all the time, and at the moment it's going to be difficult to collect this other than running around and picking it up. As you progress through the game, you're going to get other technologies and also be able to interact with dinos, tame dinos, and they're going to help you to collect some of these resources. So let me just explain a few more things about this main screen. I was mentioning about some of the icons in the bottom right. You can see there's an XP icon at the bottom, and this is showing how much XP is being generated. You can see it here. That's slowly increasing, and every time that increases I get some points. If we just stick on this right hand side though, just to explain those, we have a health bar, so this is now full at 100, and that's a percentage by the way, so I think it is, yeah. So as soon as I increase points into these, that's not going to change from 100, that's a percentage, yeah. Same here for food. You can see that the food has dropped slightly, because obviously as I continue to go around and do certain things, that's going to drive my hunger, and this number's going to decrease, so I'm going to have to start thinking shortly about food. Similar with water and staying hydrated. If you run that to 0, then you actually start losing health pretty rapidly. So again, water's something you need to just be mindful of. But I am on a beach, so I don't think I'm going to struggle there. This top one is for your carry weight. Do be careful for this, because you can become encumbered, and that can be a real pain, especially if you're in the middle of trying to get away from something, or you're harvesting something and then you get attacked. So just be mindful for that. As we continue through the game, we're going to find ways to store items and unload them from your character. But for now, just keep that in mind. So we mentioned these points, we're going to come back to those. I already put one into the health stat. I'm going to put a few more into there. All of these are pretty self-explanatory. Stamina is needed for running and for using weapons, so that will decrease your stamina over time. Oxygen for breathing underwater. Food, as I said, will decrease. You can see this is going down. Water will also decrease, and again, depending on the temperature, as this rises, if this was like 40 or 50, you'll find that actually this drops much quicker. Weight, as we said, it's quite low at the minute, so that's okay. Melee damage, that will increase both my strength if I'm just punching, but also when using weapons. So you will want to be likely increasing that. Crafting skill we're going to leave for the moment. And then fortitude, this is a bit confusing when you first start, because again, it's not really explained, but the fortitude is there to really help predominantly with the environment. So if you are waking up in the north and you've decided to go for something really tricky, you're going to be really cold really quickly, and you're not going to have access to the armor that you need to mitigate that. So fortitude, you will probably have to spend some more points in there in order to manage that, otherwise you'd be dying pretty quickly. So what I like to do at the start of the game is normally put a couple into there. So once you've used those initial ones, it brings you onto your engrams, and you want to think of your engrams as your tech tree. This goes up to about level 100, slightly over, and you can see all the additional tech that you can learn over time. This comes from your XP, and those points accrue like we just saw. So at the moment, we've already got a couple of engrams open. This is how you're going to get the things that you need. So I would suggest you uncover all the way through to level 3. And that's as far as we're going to go for today. But you can have a look at some of the later engrams and start to get an idea for maybe some other resources you might want to get. So you might be looking ahead and go, okay, that's interesting. Mortar and pestle, maybe I might need that. Narcotic, that might be useful. It says here, can put you to sleep, can be crafted at the mortar and pestle. So you start to get an idea for some of the items that you might need. We've got some further buttons on here. This is my inventory, so that takes me back to that home screen, but you've got all these other tabs, so you can access the engrams here. Tribe information isn't so relevant because we're playing in single player. Tracking panel, this would be more helpful when we've got dinos, but you can then find and search for your dinos and select from different drop downs. Here we have Explorer notes. You can see many of these have been unlocked as I've been walking around for quite some time now, but I certainly haven't unlocked everything, and I'll talk more about Explorer notes when we bump into them. This gives you the picture of the minimap again, and we have a final skill tree, but again you need to give access to that in the game if you want to do that. So for the moment I tend to ignore that final one. So let's get back into the game. Just to be aware, I was still live in the game there, so if a dino came running up to me and started to attack me then, I would have wanted to come out of that screen pretty quickly, so just be mindful for that. So you can probably hear lots of noises. That's going to be something you have to get used to. It can be a bit terrifying. I would say at this stage just explore what happens when you interact with different animals. And you can see by punching this one it's actually making him go to sleep, so it's not killing him. And you can see some other creatures might come and interact. Some can get defensive. You can see I've already taken a little bit of damage because I'm using my fists. So let's just talk about the initial weapons and items that you might want to craft. So now that I've been walking around and I've started picking up some things, I've got access to several of these. Stone pick, that's going to be pretty important. It would be good to put on some clothing, so I'm going to do that. You can double click with left, or you can right click and you get these additional options. So I'll just double click that one, and I can do that one as well. That's the sound for leveling up. You can see I've got a further level. I'm going to put that into health. Again, it automatically loads into engrams. I'm going to go back to inventory for now. You can double click again to load these straight onto your character. So I'm going to start with those. And then if I go back to the crafting screen, what were the other things that would be important? Well, I've got a spear here, which is really the first weapon. And if you click on track, you can actually pin this to the side. So when I leave the inventory page, it'll still show me the items that I need. And this is really helpful in the early game here to know what kind of materials you want to pick up. But as a general point, all these things that you've been collecting, you're getting lots of berries here, but the fibre, the wood, the thatch, the stones, the flint, all of that is material you're going to be using all the time. Just bear in mind that that's going to increase your weight at this stage. If you take on too much, that will start to become a problem. So let's have a look. We've got spear selected, but actually if you look here, I haven't got enough wood and I also haven't got enough flint. So I'd probably start there, but since I've got this open anyway, campfire for cooking meat, staying warm and providing light. So it's giving you some help there. Definitely would be something I want to try and get as soon as possible. And then the third one, we've already selected spear, but I haven't selected the stone hatchet. So I'm going to start with those three. Can't pin any others. If I click on here, you'll see it gives a little error message at the top, tracker limit reached. So you can only pin 3 at a time, so that gives us plenty of initial objectives. And I can continue going around picking up berries, but that's not going to help me for the other things. So I'm probably going to have to continue punching trees. Let's see as these things slowly increase where I'm up to. Okay, so the stone hatchet I'd created a moment ago, so all I've done is I've dropped that into my hotbar down the bottom, I can now select 2, and that gives me the options to start harvesting stone. And by doing that, I'm going to very shortly have access to the other items I need. Again, that's giving me more experience. You can see here I've got access now to the spear, and I've also got access to the stone hatchet. So I'm going to press V again and go back into my inventory. I'm going to get the stone hatchet. I'm going to start with that first. Again, I'm going to drag that over to my hotbar. I've got another point, so I'm going to put that into melee. And again, you can decide how you want to split that. It's very much going to be based on your playstyle. I think in the early game, whilst you're trying to understand what exactly is happening in the world, don't stress too much about that, just be mindful for your overall health. And again, my general advice would be try to limit interaction with big dinos until you're feeling maybe a bit more prepared. So I'm continuing to explore the items that I can interact with. Just something to note about the stone hatchet and the pickaxe, they both do slightly different things. So here you can see I'm preferring wood, and if I do that and use the hatchet, it is giving me slightly more thatch. That's also true for a separate tree, which is a bit further down here, so I'm just going to go and run over and show you that, because I've been chopping away for wood. But if I go to, whoops, I just missed that. If I go to this is where we get thatch from. And again, if I prioritise that with my pickaxe, that's going to give me more thatch, but I can still cut it down with the axe. And again, I could punch that and I would get thatch from that predominantly. So it's just something to bear in mind. If I come back to my inventory and crafting, anything else that I need to be mindful of? Well, we've not talked about metal yet. This has just dropped into my inventory and I was getting that from the stone. Do keep hold of the metal. It is heavier, so these numbers in the bottom refers to the weight. So you can see actually the wood is quite heavy. The berries, they're starting to pick up and add to my overall weight. And again, you're going to start to get a feel for the things that are important or not, but I'm already getting fairly close to my weight cap. So I could put a little bit of experience into the weight, that drops that slightly. Again, you want to balance that because in the early game, we do want to try and build up our strength of our character as well. So what other things have we not done? Since we've already got our 2 weapons, the thing we haven't done yet is created a spear. Now I typically like to create at least 2 of these, if not more. But if I create 2, you'll see that actually I've run out of something. And if I look again over there, because it's still pinned, I've run out of flint. So why don't I go back to the rocks, press 2 to get my pickaxe, and I'm going to get a little bit more flint. I'm also collecting a bit of stone there. I also got a metal ore. I'm just going to do a few more of these. Again, just being mindful for that weight restriction. And it's not necessarily an issue. If you do end up with weight, you can right click on any of these and you can interact with them, and you can also drop some of them. But of course, if you drop it in the early game, you don't know how valuable this might be. So for the moment, I would say keep hold of those and we'll explore those together shortly. So I've created my spears. I wanted to create a few more. I do think creating at least 3 of these, but 3 to 5 is probably a good rule of thumb because these break quite easily, and I would put that on my hotbar. And now if I go back over and attack this dodo, you can see how much more powerful that is. And then I can use my hatchet to harvest more materials. And again, experiment with both the hatchet and the pickaxe. They're going to give you slightly different values of different materials, and different dinos are going to give you different materials. For the moment, I've got a little bit of raw meat, and I also got some hide. So what are the items left? We wanted a campfire. I've now actually collected everything that I need for that. I also haven't crafted a torch. So you see, already within not that much time, I've managed to create a really good starting point. I haven't tried to take on the whole map already, and I've prioritised just getting a little stable with things so that I can get my bearings and feel like the whole world isn't going to eat me, because I promise you, the whole world is going to eat you. And if you spend any time in any of these places, you're going to find that everything wants to eat you, which is why I'm saying stay out of the water. I actually picked that up. Look at how terrifying that is. Again, I can cut this up, and that looks like a new picture. Let's see what that was that drops into the inventory. And that was in fact raw fish meat. So we've finished crafting our campfire, we've finished crafting our torch. Let's put those on the hotbar. Let's go over here, and you could put the campfire anywhere. I'm just going to press 7. I'm going to bring it down. If you couldn't place it for whatever reason, that would show as red, can you see over here? And you just have to keep placing it. And you can play around with the placement by pressing and holding E and changing the alignment. For now, I'm just going to place that there. Once you've done that, you can interact with it. Once you're in here, there's a couple of things. It says it must contain fuel, and that could be wood or thatch. I have both of those here, so I could click one, or I could drag the whole stack, and I could cook some meat. Now I only have 2 slots here, but I could take both of those, so now that I actually have some fish I could cook that as well. And all I have to do then is light the fire. There are several items in the game that work in this way, and this actually took me quite a while to work out when I started playing it. So just give this some time. This will now start cooking away, and in another 10 seconds or so you're going to see one of these change to a cooked food item. There we go. So the cooked fish meat sates your hunger slightly and provides health while being digested. Wild carnivores will eat it, but prefer raw meat. So this is why I'm saying just interact with the world as much as you can, but do it in a way that you feel you can build up quite slowly and at a pace that you feel you can manage. Again, you can drop this into your hotbar. It's also now created some of the other cooked meat. I could do the same here. And if I come back out and either press 9 or 0, I'm going to start eating. And can you see again how my food bar in the bottom right has gone up? And I can do that there. So it went up slightly with the fish, and actually the cooked meat has got me almost back to 100. So I think the only thing left to do that we haven't already is to create a water skin. As I said, you can only pin so many. As I've created these, I'm going to delete those. I think that's a really good feature in this game. So if I go to the water skin, right click and click track, you can see that I need a bit more fibre. The campfire can be cooking away, and I'm going to go back to my plants. Press E. I'm going to continue to harvest with some fibre, and you can see I've got loads of fibre now, and I'm ready to create my water skin. Come back over to my campfire. Water skin is ready, so I can craft one of those. Craft 2. No need to craft more at the minute. Again, could put stats into different things, but I'm going to prioritise my health and melee to melee. And you can see I've actually created already 62 engrams, and I've not really done anything else. This is where I would like you to try and get to in your first run through. So I'm hoping that's been helpful. Don't try to do too much, but also don't worry if you do something totally random. You could go for a big swim and see what's there in the ocean. You could go into the jungle and see what's out there. You could go up to every single dino that you see and interact with it. The biggest challenge in Ark is if you die, everything your character is holding is stored with your character. And if I press M and go to the map, you can press it once, or if I press it twice, it loads the whole map, and you can see how big the map is. So the challenge is, if I've created my campfire here, and I decide to wander all the way over to here, and I die over there, when I respawn, if I haven't built anywhere as a respawning point, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in a second, then I will have to select one of those respawning points that we had at the beginning, and they're just generally spotted around the map. But you could click on the one that's over here and end up being spawned a little bit higher, a little bit lower. And then you've got to get all the way through the jungle, trying to pass millions of dinos you didn't even know existed, whilst trying to get back to your dead body to retrieve a stone hatchet that's taken you 3 hours to create. So what I'm saying is, don't try and do all of that straight away. Try and just get set up where you are, and then you can slowly explore from there. I think that would be my biggest top tip for anyone starting the game, because I think what will happen then is you'll avoid the frustration that I had starting the game when I was just thinking, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to interact, I don't know where to go, so I'll just kind of do everything. And it did make it quite tricky. You didn't know what to hold on to, you didn't know whether to create a base or start building things, you didn't know which engrams were more important, and so that took quite a long time to work out. And I think that is one of the real advantages of the game. It is a survivor game, it's a sandbox game, so feel free, explore that. But I'm hoping if you have taken a few little hints and tips from this video, it's going to help support you in those first formative hours starting from zero. So everyone, I think that's a good place to finish this episode. First look at getting started in Ark Survival Ascended, and in future episodes we're going to be breaking down specific systems in more detail and building on this foundation. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe. Hope to see you on the next video. For now, explore, analyze, simulate, and I'll catch you next time.